Hi everyone, this is Meredith Root, and welcome to the Afternoon Snack Podcast, brought to you by Tactic Nutrition.
Hi, I'm Alex Parker, owner of Tactic Nutrition, former lawyer, CrossFit Games athlete, turned health and fitness geek.
I'm also into health and nutrition, a more recent CrossFit Games athlete, co-owner of Tactic Nutrition, and former engineer. We are here to have fun, engaging conversation about some of our favorite topics, including nutrition, health, coaching, motivation, and of course, CrossFit.
Our goal is to give you something to think and talk about and hopefully make you laugh along the way.
Hey Alex.
Hey.
This is actually the first time that we've spoken since yesterday, the loss.
Yeah. You can say it.
The U.S. women's soccer team lost to the Canadians in the semifinal round.
And if you don't know, Meredith is obsessed with the U.S. women's soccer team, national soccer team.
I love them.
And we've gotten into many arguments about them before.
But like,
we could have a whole podcast on this.
I'm sure. Yeah, easily. Probably multiple podcasts on the women's national team. But that was also before you really understood why they're such important people.
Yeah, but still, I don't agree with some of the things that they've done in the past and the way that they've behaved in a very unsportsmanlike manner, in my opinion.
Are you talking about Alex Morgan sipping tea?
I'm talking about every single one of them celebrating like they won the World Cup when they scored 20 goals against whatever team that was. I don't even remember.
It was 13 against Thailand.
Okay. 13-0.
Yes.
That's necessary.
I think at the time they were feeling dejected and unappreciated.
Whatever the reason, I didn't agree with it.
Well, anyways.
But we had a big argument about that. Meredith likes to stand up for them.
I do, but
I think she secretly wants me to dye my hair purple.
Yeah, bleach it, dye it purple, cut it a little bit short on the sides, and wear soccer jerseys all the time. That'd be great. Yeah, I mean, like anyone who follows the U.S. team, I think kind of saw this one coming. They just haven't played well this tournament. They have a new coach. They weren't playing their game. They're out of it, but it still sucks.
It was like, I wasn't even that invested in the game. Of course, I'm cheering for Canada. But so at the end of the game, U.S. lost, and Meredith is just silent, still sitting in her jersey. I'm just silent also. Not going to say anything because she's clearly depressed.
Yeah, it threw my morning off for sure. And then they did the interview, and I just I'm a big fan of some of the the older players on that team, obviously Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, Carly Lloyd. And so Megan Rapinoe did a post-game interview because she's a captain, and she's kind of talking about the loss and saying, I'm trying to get everyone invested in the gold medal matches. We still have something to play for, and it still matters. And then the broadcaster, I think, asked a question about, we saw you go over to Carly Lloyd at the end, and I think those two have such a history together, and she kind of acknowledged we're both closer to the end of our careers than the beginning. I think Megan Rapinoe is 36, Carly Lloyd's 38 or 39. So this will probably be their last Olympic games. They might play in the World Cup together in 2023 or whenever that is. But I don't know. It's just very emotional as someone who's in their 30s and it's hard.
Yeah. And I'll give them credit. They're doing a lot for the sport and for equal pay. Mm-hmm. And you can't discount that they're kind of putting their necks out on the line in order to fight for this cause. And I have a lot of respect for that.
And it probably does take a toll on the field. It's exhausting doing that. And
absolutely.
The court battles and just the ongoing kind of struggle that is that. So, still proud, still supportive. I would, really like to see Jill Ellis come back, but she won't. All right. So let's get into it. We're doing a CrossFit Games recap episode. So the CrossFit Games wrapped up on Sunday. Today's Tuesday. We wanted to give it kind of a day to give ourselves a day to digest what we watched and, you know, do a little reading and rewatching and / we were just busy yesterday with other things. But yeah, it was definitely, I thought it was a very entertaining CrossFit Games to watch. And I think that would be, even though like part of it is because we didn't really have a full games to watch last year. And then 2019, we were there in 2019, but you know, it was a shit show with all the people competing and the cuts and just kind of what that year was. I just thought it was really great. The spectacle was good as always. I didn't necessarily like the jerseys or the look of the games. I felt it was a little flat compared to previous years, but I like the Reebok stuff. I like the colors. I like, you know, there's always so much thought put into, you know, why are we picking certain colors? You know, when I was there, it's like there was this kind of white marble thing going on, and they were like, well, it's because there's white marble, you know, there's granite and stuff, you know, in the ground. It was all very well thought out, and there was always a reason. And you probably remember when you were in Carson, they have a reason behind the colors that they decide to choose. And I always just thought that was cool. Plus you see colors that, you know, put together that don't necessarily go together, like maroon and orange, and somehow it works. So I just like visually it fell a little bit flat from I just felt like everyone was wearing the same thing. Because even like the dark, like the gray or green camo kind of just looked like a gray shirt when the camera was pulled back. So it's like, meh. I don't know who I'm looking at. I always like to see who can put together the worst combination.
I like the heather gray on heather gray.
the gym teacher look.
Yeah. Like the heather gray sports bra with the heather gray tights.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because like even with Reebok, there was always someone who would put same color top, same color bottom. And you're like, that's not.
It was harder to do that though, because they didn't often have
corresponding.
And like, I feel like sports bra with like tight is okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay when it's t-shirt and tight.
Yeah.
Or t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still fine. I really shouldn't comment on what people wear because I
will say
style,
that having been there, you do get like with the colors, you get to the end of the weekend, and if you haven't done laundry, you're just like, ah, crap.
Yeah.
I have to wear some ridiculous combination, or like, you know, you have to wear shorts when you'd rather wear tights.
Yeah.
Like,
and like if I remember, I think my mom ended up doing laundry one day, but they do not give you enough clothes to make it through all of those events without re-wearing stuff.
Yep.
Which is kind of gross.
Yeah, I did laundry at the Edgewater, that hotel, and that was...
No, I think your sister did it.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
She saved the day.
Yeah. So that was crucial, because I was coming down to like slim pickings, like the little mini bras and things that I hate, but...
yeah, because those giant titties of yours.
They just... I almost feel like
they're just not contained.
I almost feel like because they're so small, the bra just slides down, and like those bras are problematic. I've tried the size small, I've tried size extra small, and they both do the same thing. So I'm like, okay, I can't wear the micro bras, even though I do have micro boobies.
It's valid.
Yeah, so that's a thing. But generally speaking, like uniforms aside, I thought it was really cool. And
I only heard like from people who watched it, they seem to really enjoy this year.
Yeah.
One thing I did like, and I can't recall in 2019 or 18, but a lot of the heats had 20 people in them, which was better because you weren't doing 4 heats of the men and then 4 heats of the women.
Yeah.
It was a much quicker turnover.
Yes.
For events.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I think the finishing position at the end of the weekend highlights why we don't pick podiums and why I don't think anyone should pick podiums, because like you just have no idea. I mean, aside from the fact that Tio was kind of a shoe-in to win, which everyone knew that, and like, you know, Justin probably gonna finish in the top. I know I said he wasn't, but that was just something that I said to be interesting. Like I knew he had a shot at it if the programming was good. you know, and despite being very young, he's been doing this kind of forever. Like he's a bit of a veteran in that way. But yeah, the finishing position, the top 10 was interesting. Top 5 was really interesting.
I mean, there wasn't anybody in the top 5 where you were like, what? But it's just
No.
like, you know, you look at, and it's so hard with CrossFit because you don't know what the events are going to be. And like the events per competition can change so drastically, which can impact where you place. So for example, you have somebody like Brent Fikowski who barely qualifies for the games and then gets third.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if we're going based off semifinals, like Brent does horrible at the games, but you can't go based on past finishes because things can change so quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when you compare, and like we've had kind of the, you know, we've been lucky to be able to watch the Olympic Games at the same time. And so you see, and like obviously kind of the whole deal with CrossFit is that it is unknown. The events do change. It's not even like the closest comparison on an Olympic level would be decathlon. But even with decathlon, you know exactly what the events are. You know how people have performed earlier in the year in qualifiers. So the announcers and fans and people who follow along generally have a good idea of like who to keep their eyes on. Like when we're looking at like a 200-meter run at the Olympics, like they know exactly like, okay, this is a 20.2 guy, or, keep your eye on, this lane. He's one of the few that has run under 20 seconds. Like nothing's really a surprise. It's a surprise when someone doesn't do well for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And maybe there was that one swimming event early on where the guy, like the only swimmer on the national team, won out of like lane 8. You remember that?
Yeah.
I don't remember the country.
Tunisia.
I don't know that country. Tunisia? Did you just make a country up?
No.
Okay. We're going to pause while Alex finds this country.
Tunisia.
Okay.
It's the northernmost country in Africa.
Are you sure that's how you pronounce it?
No, I'm not. The only reason I pronounced it like that is because my dad used to go there for work and he said it like that. So I assumed. I see? I'm just Googling Tunisia pronunciation.
Usually Google will.
Tunisia. So I was pretty close.
Tunisia. How do you spell that?
Tunisia. Anyways, he won out of like lane 8, which was insane.
Yeah.
And he was shocked, like just completely shocked.
Okay, here we go. It's like this.
Tunisia.
Okay, I was kind of close enough.
Yeah, I think the "ia" you added that in.
No, I said Tunisia or something.
Yeah, your first one was bad, but I was gonna give you a pass on that.
At least I knew that where he was from, and that was a country.
Tunisia, I've heard that before. What you said first, I've not heard of. And then I was pausing trying to like figure out what that could be, but yeah, and it wasn't that I just couldn't remember the country. But he was stoked.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember his coach, but his coach was like,
we should do another podcast on geography.
We really should. I'm like actually
just quiz each other.
I'm actually pretty good at geography. I would say the exception to that would be probably African geography, because I'm not that familiar with where like little countries like that. I'm not as familiar with. All right. Well, that was a good. What were we talking about? Oh, right. The finishes. That's to say, like, CrossFit's just not going to be as predictable. Plus, like, this year you had some people pull out. We'll get into that a little bit later. But not surprisingly, a couple of people got a little ill after the swim event in that lake, which tends to have some algae going on.
Yeah, well, we're not sure it's because of the lake, but
yeah, could be.
Could be anything.
Overall, I guess the question is, like, do you think the test this year was a good one?
Yeah.
From a programming perspective. You'd think, yeah.
Yeah, there was one event where I was like, I questioned one event, and that was the one on Sunday, the repeatability
Yeah.
with the yoke.
So that was 4 rounds, 20 GHD sit-ups, 8 cheese curd burpees over a hay bale, and then a 168-foot yoke carry, and then 1 minute rest. So you had 4 rounds. The idea was that you would complete the GHD sit-ups, the sandbag over the hay bale, and then you would advance the yoke as far as you could in the remaining time.
Yeah.
And you had a 2-minute window to do that, and then the final window was 3 minutes if you were stuck in the final round. And Tia and a few people actually
almost finished it in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, in the very first round.
I was like kind of watching it, and then it goes on my computer, and I looked up and I was like, hang on, what?
Yeah.
That they couldn't have predicted that was going to happen.
No.
Like, I don't think they wanted anyone to finish in almost the first round.
I think the intention there was to have people finishing like
third and fourth, so they can actually test it.
Yeah. So I think maybe the yoke carry needs to be double, or there needs to be more burpees or like a monostructural element in there.
I mean, I don't know. It didn't seem like it was a particularly good test for the top girls.
Well, I don't think it accomplished what it was meant to accomplish.
No, because they're not testing the repeatability. If Tia's finishing, they basically tested her in a 2-minute workout.
Yeah. And like, yep, she can crush a
like,
2-minute workout.
she's good, but like she wasn't the only one who was finishing at the 2-minute or the second round.
I agree. I thought and that's like, that one's just kind of tough. And like when you sort of pull back and consider it from a programming perspective, like the fact of the matter is you don't have Tia Claire Toomey testing the events. It's difficult to predict always how much better she's going to be than the people you have testing the events. So that was probably just a sort of misunderstanding of what the best in the sport can do on a particular event. So
fair enough.
That's okay. I think it had you seen the entire field of 40 complete that event, it probably would have played out exactly the way it was meant to for the majority of the field. And that field is like, even though the 40 athletes were cut down to 20 by the end of the weekend, I think it is worth mentioning like that the top 40 that make it to the games are like still the pinnacle of the sport, or at least the way that CrossFit is represented by the sport. Like you're talking about the top 0.01% of people. So like, even though they get cut, even though, they aren't finishing in the top, or maybe they're finishing last in events, like they're kind of still crushing it compared to what most people could do. Anyways, I thought the run clean event, I didn't think that necessarily needed to be 2 events. I thought that was redundant. But cool to see the final. I thought the final, like if you remove I don't know, maybe they were both good. Maybe just like a heavy clean ladder. I don't know. It was weird though. The spacing between them was also awkward. Like I could see that being better. 5 rounds for time at the lighter weight, rest 5 minutes, 5 rounds for time at the heavyweight, move on.
Yeah, I was surprised when they did it like 2 separate events.
Yeah.
Like it didn't
with
have
a full
it back to
hour
back. Yeah.
in between or more.
Imagine having to like re-warm up. I wonder if they were even given a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering that when we saw Haley kind of just standing there. I was like, she cleaned the last bar, the 205 bar, no problem in the first part of the workout. So it was odd to me that the 210 didn't happen, but it's like if she didn't get a chance to like re-warm up properly,
yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I think the programming overall was really, really good from a fitness perspective, especially because we've seen such a strength bias in the online, like the qualifier events and even some of the in-person semifinals. I thought the variety was really good. And from like a specialty or like novelty equipment standpoint, there wasn't a lot, which I always am a fan of. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, the kayak was something, but it wasn't as biased as like the prone paddleboard, where you get anybody from Australia just absolutely crush it because they've been on them several times. Like it didn't seem like there was anyone on the kayak who was like an expert kayaker.
Well, Yonikowski was.
was he an expert?
He like his technique was far and beyond better than anybody
Yeah,
else
but is
out
that
there.
because he's been on a kayak?
I mean, he's clearly been on a kayak.
Okay. Well, anyways,
But I think the majority of the field, no.
like anybody who gets in a kayak should be able to do it fairly decently. Some
Yeah.
people didn't, which I just am always surprised when I see such like lack of athleticism for something that's so simple.
It's like, why are your hands so
Paddling
close
a
together?
kayak, and
yeah.
I can say that because I've been in a kayak, and like
Yeah.
it's not that hard. But yeah, I still thought the games were kind of heavy.
From a weight perspective. Yeah, I mean, you had
Like the heavy clean ladder, snatch, the pig, like even that very high like volume muscle up workout had really heavy implements.
Yeah, that one had a heavy sled. It had
The
the
pig.
pig. There was the heavy thruster event with the wall walks.
Yeah, like 135 is a heavy thruster for that many.
Yep. There was the heavy clean ladder. There was.
It wasn't like ridiculously heavy where you get someone like Haley Adams who's just completely out of it, or like Turi Helgadottir. She wasn't completely out of it, even though she's not the strongest of athletes.
Yeah, I mean, but even look at the final day. You have a 425 pound or 605 pound yoke carry. You have 405 pound, 275 pound deadlift.
Yeah.
And then you have back rack, front rack, and overhead walking lunge with 185, 135.
That's heavy.
It's heavy. It's a heavy final day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's just, I think that like there wasn't anything that was light. Like you didn't see like anything really light except for the snatch barbell with the
Echo bite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you had your.
But again, that is going to benefit a stronger athlete because it's a short workout and it comes down to the bike.
Yeah, it's a power output workout. Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's just, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you did have a couple of longer events in there with no weight. It's always a question of like, do the aerobic events balance well and counter the heavy events enough to where you end up with the right people at the top.
And I think so.
Yeah.
I just think the sport generally is becoming heavier.
Oh yeah. I mean, the fact that you're seeing like, I mean, remember 135/95 used to be considered kind of the heavy thruster weight. And you saw that level up to the next level this year.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right. I think that the sport is getting heavier, generally speaking. And, as long as they're including tests that do require some, longer monostructural pieces and require some aerobic ability, like the top will probably be relatively fit and well-rounded. But I think you're going to see a bias in the long run if things keep going towards a stronger athlete, which, like, suffice to say, is sort of the nail in the coffin on our careers. Yeah. Did you have a favorite workout?
I think I was most stunned by Danielle Brandon doing the handstand walk event. And I think that was my favorite event just because. Or the max snatch. From like a spectator's perspective, those were the most fun to watch. Short and quick and just like a good showcase of how talented some of these athletes are.
Yeah. What Danielle Brandon did on her hands, I don't think, unless you have spent any amount of time on your hands, you can even fully comprehend.
No, it was
what
just
that means.
Incredible.
And like everyone knows she's really good on her hands. That's no surprise. I didn't know she was that good. I've seen her post some things on like Instagram that makes it, doing handstand walks backwards and this and that. Like she's clearly very comfortable, but there's a difference between being comfortable when you're not fatigued and being able to do it when it matters, at the end of what was the whole, was it 200 feet in total?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, I don't know that I could do a 200-foot handstand walk without obstacles as fast as she did a 200-foot handstand walk.
I don't know the exact distance, but anyways, it was quite long with 3 obstacles.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that.
And the last obstacle being the stairs into the parallettes.
Yeah, it's the hardest.
Which is the hardest combination, and that's the last one.
Yeah.
That's just, I'm sorry, but that was amazing. So that was my favorite event from a spectator standpoint, from like, a good fitness test standpoint. I don't know. The thruster wall walk one was pretty cool. Like,
Yeah. I really liked, obviously the snatch, and watching Annie hit 200 pounds was incredible. Just because she kept surprising herself. She was surprising herself starting at like 185 and it kept happening.
Yeah.
So that was cool to see. I think from like a classic CrossFit, I really like the 21:15:9 Echo Bike Snatch event. I like that type of event generally. I think it's a really good test, and it's something that can sometimes be forgotten about or neglected at like the high A levels of the sport, because it's not, flashy, it's not fancy, there's nothing really special about it. It's just get out there and do it. So I thought that was a good one and the right one to cut down to 30 athletes.
Yeah.
And then I thought the Toast Bar Run event on Saturday morning was the right event to cut to 20 athletes.
Yep.
What were I know we've kind of already touched on the kayak, but the swim event, do you think that accomplished what it was meant to accomplish? Which is, I think that's meant to be your long monostructural test of aerobic fitness.
I actually disagree.
Okay.
I don't think it's meant to be the long test of fitness. I think it's just like swimming is fitness, and even though it's high skill, it's like, it's kind of just, people want to see these athletes swimming. It takes away the argument, well, can they swim?
Yeah.
And then the kayak, I think, is just there for
why do you think
entertainment?
It's like,
I don't know.
Swimming, why do you think people wonder if they can swim and they don't wonder, like, can they bike?
I don't know. You could get into that whole like argument of whether like how much skill is involved in being fit.
Yeah.
How you define this test.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole argument with Vellner. Like, can he win if he can't swim? I mean, obviously that hurts him.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, is it appropriate to have that test? I don't know. I actually don't have an opinion on the swimming. It is a very like skilled event, and it biases somebody who's had a swimming background more so than somebody who has a gymnastics background being able to handstand walk, I think.
Yeah, I think the skill and the experience required to be a very good swimmer is one of the hardest things to develop.
And I don't think that you can test like a monostructural aerobic event with swimming because it's too skilled.
Even if you pair, so what I think, I like seeing swimming in the CrossFit Games. I always have. I think with 15 events, it's perfectly fine to have that test in there. I think that what felt like it was missing this year was an aerobic, like a cardiovascular test. In the 3 mile kayak, like it's a lot on the shoulders. It is like fatiguing, but it's not a whole body fatiguing like you get from running or rowing long distances, things like that. So that's why I said in like the last podcast, I really like when when swimming is paired with another monostructural element. So it does two things. It, number one, becomes a better test of cardiovascular fitness. And then number two, it takes the edge off the advantage that ex-swimmers have in an event like that. With that said, like event 1, you saw Amanda Barnhart, who was a collegiate swimmer, probably the best swimmer in the field, and she lost her advantage because she couldn't kayak. And so maybe the kayak does that. I just don't think the kayak is like necessarily the right implement to test cardiovascular fitness, especially considering that wasn't tested kind of anywhere else in the games. And people might try to make an argument for event 10, which was the toes to bar running. But I still think it's got a gymnastics element.
Do you remember it was maybe 2014 they had the swim in the ocean with, I think it was kettlebell thrusters?
Yes.
That was a great event.
Yeah, it was.
Because you have an advantage as a swimmer, but if you're a really good swimmer but you're not as good at CrossFit or as fit, like it's going to level the playing field slightly.
Or even back in, I don't remember what year it was. I'm going to say 2014, but it might have been 2013 when they did the pool swim with the bar muscle ups. Mm-hmm. Super good event.
Yeah.
Because you're forcing people to, Like what I do like about swimming is you can't it requires some breath control versus like when you're doing CrossFit or when you're running and you haven't worked on breath control, you can just, be breathing like a Neanderthal and it really doesn't matter. But as soon as you start putting in, when you put in swimming and now you require people to do anything outside of the pool that requires bracing or anything like that, like it just becomes more difficult, which I like. So
I think the kayak was too odd of a implement for it to be to level the playing field.
yeah,
Like I don't think it was like the luck of the draw. I don't know why Amanda Barnhart was so bad at it.
She was.
It doesn't
like,
mean she's bad at CrossFit. It's like if you replace the kayak with a run,
she wins. Maybe.
Well, I don't I don't know because I don't know what the kayak even does. I think it's just there for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
It's because each year there needs to be something that's like, like this is different.
Yeah. I think a swim into a bike would be really cool.
Yeah, actually,
An
that
aqua
would be
bike
cool.
would be a neat event.
An aqua bike?
That's what they're called. The races are called aqua bikes.
Is it a bike on land?
No, it's called an aqua bike because you swim and then you bike, and that's just what they call.
But
those
you
races.
bike on land.
Yes.
You don't bike on the water.
No.
With one of those, like
paddle bikes. No, it's not a paddle bike.
Okay, that would be funny though.
Yeah, that would be a spectacle for sure.
That would be bad for the lactic acid burn.
It would really start accumulating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about surprise standout performances and also surprise letdowns. Go.
Okay. First off, please, can we talk about again Annie Thorsdottir?
Yeah.
Not only is she just a beauty of a person and just honest and raw and has been through a hell of a year, but she just really seemed to be enjoying herself out there this year, which you don't see as often in CrossFit. You just don't. People are, and there's nothing wrong with being serious. It's a sport. It's what people, devote their lives to. I love seeing somebody just absolutely crushing it and just having the time of their life.
Yeah.
I loved when she was coming through the runs in between the cleans on that clean event, 6 and 7, literally smiling.
Yeah, just happy to be there. And there are people who are like, oh, I'm just happy to be here, and they finished 25th, and that's fine. That's good for them.
Yeah.
She was that person, but she also crushed it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not sure where she's at mentally, or maybe she wasn't expecting to do that well. I mean, she's had a hard year, and I think if you followed along with her at all, you're aware. But she just every single event, well, I mean, most events, she was super consistent. She showed up and just kept surprising herself. And I think when you're coming back from the type of year that she's had, she obviously had no expectations of herself. Because that's it's a super humbling experience, I think. And, yeah, it was everything was a win. Being there was a win. And then what happened after was just icing on the cake.
Yeah, I think it was before the final event. She was getting interviewed and she just said, I don't know what to expect. I've been struggling with the rhythm of chest to bars, which you don't hear any CrossFit Games athletes say that.
Yeah.
And she was like, we'll see how it goes. And I think she went on to say that, I'm just taking each event as it comes and I'm just doing my best and focusing on the moment. And that obviously goes a really long way.
Yeah. I mean, her 200-pound snatch was the moment of the weekend.
Yeah,
for me,
for sure.
I think she just that was so great to see.
Yeah.
And just pure joy. Yeah, which again, you see a lot of intensity of the sport. You see a lot of disappointment when people don't achieve what they set out to. And so it's just refreshing to see someone who's yeah.
It's kind of rare with a snatch. When you don't have the confidence to hit a heavy snatch, it's rare that you hit it and you're like, what? I just hit this?
Yeah. Clean, maybe.
But I think you just dump everything you have and hope for the best. And like, it's just rare.
Yeah.
Like, it's just rare to see that, to be that shocked at hitting a 200-pound snatch.
I agree.
Like, that is a really like heavy weight. On the other end of the spectrum, Cara Webb.
Yeah. Who I think
That was a bit of a disappointment.
She was someone who was in a lot of people's top 5 at the beginning of the weekend.
And fair enough. Like, she did really well all through COVID. Like, didn't she got second at Rogue?
I don't remember.
I don't know. She's been in the mix still. And
she did well in the Australian event, obviously.
Yeah.
Her training looks like it's been going great. And yeah, I mean, she was in my top 5. And then it just, you started paying attention to her when she was training in the US, when she had, I guess she traveled here, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And, she's been pretty vocal about how difficult it is to travel from Australia to the US, the cost associated with that travel, which is extreme, potentially the quarantine measures and going back to Australia, depending on what, their situation is. And then was also very, obviously sort of gutted and upset to be separated from her daughter. And it just seemed like that's kind of where her focus was. And it wasn't necessarily in the present moment. And, I can understand that. She's obviously very close with her daughter and, spend a lot of time together. And I'm also I'm not a parent, so I can't make that connection. But I do know a lot of people who have young kids and they work jobs and they separate and it might be challenging, but they also recognize hey, it's their job. And you see the same thing happening, at the Olympics, like Allison Felix. There's a number of Olympic athletes who, they had to leave their entire families, including their kids at home. And, I think there's value in being able as an athlete to compartmentalize emotions. And I understand that's probably harder when you're a parent, especially when you're a mother. But you really saw how that can play out in a negative way, I think, for someone like Cara, who hasn't necessarily really ever been away from her kid. And that's a good thing for her. I think that's not many people have an opportunity to bring their kids up that way. But the flip side of that coin is it does make it more difficult for her when it's time to do her job and to step away. Clearly, she can't quite detach from how that makes her feel emotionally.
There was also the COVID.
Yeah, and then the
aspect.
second part of that is she apparently got COVID sometime between travel and the games and was cleared by an antigen test, as in she's not contagious, so she can compete, but was clearly not recovered from a respiratory standpoint. So that sucks.
Yeah.
I hate to hear that anyone gets COVID. I feel bad for the people that do, especially when people get sick like that and it impacts their livelihood. And I won't get too on the high horse here, but there's a way to prevent that from happening. At least, maybe you still get it, but
there's a way to reduce the risk.
Yeah. And that wasn't,
Yep.
a decision that she made. And so again, that's another decision that she'll have to live with kind of moving forward. Kind of in the same vein, you have to talk about Danielle Brandon and what she endured this weekend. And I think the CrossFit Games should be commended for the approach that they took at check-in and their testing and doing everything that they could to keep athletes in the competition as safely as possible. So with Danielle, her 2 training partners, Bethany and Carrie, tested positive. Danielle did not test positive. And so she was allowed to compete. But obviously, because we know the incubation time is, 4 to 6 days with sort of the newer variants, you can't assume that she's negative or going to remain negative and not be contagious. So they kind of sequestered her for the weekend. And so she competed in lanes by herself, and she was supposed to run by herself. And then a few people ran with her. So from a competitive standpoint, probably the least ideal scenario you want to be in.
Well, yeah. And not to mention the fact she was sequestered in the back probably as well.
Yeah,
which,
you're
you know, all the athletes are kind of get together in a sense. Like you warm up together. You're not warming up together, but you're in the vibe and
yeah, and there's calm in that.
Yeah.
Like that's is as not calming as it sounds, is that it actually is calming
Yeah.
to be in that situation.
and it's part of the experience as well.
Yeah.
So she didn't have that, which is unfortunate. But again,
And she wasn't allowed to do like post event interviews. Like it was, you come onto the floor with the mask, you take the mask off, you do the event, you put the mask on, and you're escorted off. Like
Yeah.
you're really like, it's sort of a scarlet letter situation. And
what
that
I
would,
like, okay, what I love about this, and like, I'm not trying to be rude here, but like, I listened to a podcast that she was on, and she is so like, she thinks COVID and mask wearing and stuff is stupid.
yes.
And so when she's forced to do it, it kind of is like, I just knew she just probably just absolutely hated it.
yeah.
At the same time, I'm sure that as a person who's been like living in this world for the past year and a half, understands she's probably lucky to be able to compete, and like she's not in Carrie's situation.
Yeah, it could be worse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure she's aware.
But like there was one event, I think it was the handstand walk one. She's just like, there was a picture of her on, it was like morning chalk cover of the CrossFit Games where she had crossed the finish line, instead of like putting her hands up or like pointing her first two fingers,
yeah.
like as like number one, she had her middle fingers up,
Which is
and,
like so on brand for her.
like I secretly love that.
Yeah. I
But-
mean, you know, whatever, I think in that moment, competition's weird, and what gets you fired up, it's different per, you know, based on the person. I mean, you've heard Michael Jordan talk about, like, he used to like fabricate stories about his competitors to make him mad. And so like there actually, like, there could be some sort of a competitive advantage to Danielle feeling like she'd been wronged and like this and this, and there's power in that narrative for someone like her, you know, who maybe she thrives on that type of thing. I don't know, but she did really, really well on the weekend, despite having really been disadvantaged, sort of by the protocols that the games had to put in place. Mal O'Brien was the kind of the reigning teenager of the weekend. She finished 7th, I think. She looked super good all weekend, very composed. Emma Carey did great too. I just think Mal kind of looked a little sharper and less hectic at times. But I like her. She had an event win. She may have had more than one. I know she had one event win. She won the
Mal was
thruster.
7th and Emma Carey was 16th.
Yeah.
Emma Carey can't run.
No, and that's like, yeah, I don't want to be like, she's 17. I don't want to be critical, but like she's got a 250-pound clean around that, I think. I don't know what the exact number is. It's a lot, a hell of a lot more than I can clean. You know, but 205 at the end of a relatively light clean ladder is challenging because it's paired with a 200-meter run. So I think Emma, if she's smart and she has smart people around her, I think this will be a really powerful learning opportunity from
Absolutely
where her efforts need to be the next year. Which she's obviously laid a really solid foundation that can be built on really easily. I mean, like 15th, 16th place in your debut at the games.
Yeah.
Pretty good. We're kind of just going and we're doing the girls and we'll do the boys. Laura Horvath, I thought, was sort of the surprise standout of the weekend. I don't know how many people placed her in the top 5, but kind of in a repeat of 2018, finished 2nd in a fairly dominant fashion. She looked really good. And then I think you have to talk about Christy Aramo.
Okay, what I love about Christy, and I remember this at Granite Games, I was like, okay, these girls competing are so good now. Somebody like Christy, who I know is an amazing athlete, just from her previous games showings, not qualify, and then qualify in the last chance workout and come, what did she come? 6th or something?
She must have, top 2, only 2 went.
Oh no, she came 8th at the games.
Oh, sorry.
But almost didn't make it.
Yeah.
Which, again, makes you question the test to get to the games. And what the games are compared to the tests that get you there. Like, you know,
I think games are a slightly different test.
Absolutely. But that's for another time. I wasn't surprised at all by Christy, but I was like, dang, good for you.
Yeah.
Like,
She kind of
Good
did
for
what
you.
what I would expect her to do if she were to qualify. Like she doesn't tend to win qualifiers, but once she's like, if she can just get into the game, she's gonna
Yeah.
come.
I think she's a very durable athlete. Like she looks good on the final events. Like she can stay in it.
Yeah.
And she's got the base, the running, the gymnast. Like she has the strength. Like she has all of the components are there.
Yeah, that help her kind of endure a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially a games weekend.
Yeah. I completely
She doesn't
agree.
have any major holes, which I think allows her to kind of get in there.
Yeah, for sure. I think honorable mention goes to Ariel Lowen, who is not someone who I had even heard of before this year. She is the athlete who won the Granite Games and I think finished. She never competed at that level, obviously never competed at the games level, but then finished 14th at the games this year. So really impressive showing by her, especially she was pretty open with the fact that she didn't even expect to like qualify at the Granite Games. She just wanted like a sign for her garage. And yeah, now
She's a mom too.
She is a mom. Yeah. So a couple of strong moms up there. The dudes, shorter list because like I don't care as much. I think Jason Hopper was the guy that a lot of people had their eyes on to be an upset this weekend, and he didn't quite have it, which isn't a huge surprise. He had moments where he looked good, but then like just looked shaky and unfamiliar in other workouts, and I think that ultimately kind of cost him.
He did not do well in the muscle up sandbag event. He was struggling big time.
Yeah.
And he went out, I think he went out pretty hot.
Yeah.
And then fell back pretty quickly. That was interesting to see. It's just like, I think that's somebody who's not familiar with some of the way that the events play out because he's still so new to the sport.
I agree.
So I think, honestly, it's going to be for him a similar scenario to the teenagers in the women's division.
Yeah.
Like he's going to just learn a lot from this experience and come back bigger and stronger and better.
Yeah. I agree. Stand out for the men. I just wrote the Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
So really strong finish from Pat Vellner, who finished second, Brent, who was third, and then Alex Vigneault, who was eighth. Yeah. So pretty good there.
Okay, again, and it's a little different for men, but like Vellner has a new baby and Alex Vigneault has a kid. And I'm just like, dang, that's like, that's impressive to be that fit. Like it's doable. I know, 'cause you see it done, but it's a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Like you're not sleeping as much. Like we work with clients who are dads and they're just as oftentimes just as much of a part of raising a child as the mom in terms of what it can take away from recovery and performance of the sport.
Yeah, and it's just like, if nothing else, even if you're sleeping in another room, it's something else to think about.
Yeah.
It's like it's
totally
on your mind.
Yep.
Because, it's your child.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I think about Ivy all the time, and she's just a cat. So, like, imagine having a baby. So distracting. So super
But
impressive.
also, okay, Ivy kind of adds to our life, making us better. I feel like it's a distraction can sometimes be a good thing for athletes.
Yeah.
So like being a dad, it's like, you're not always just like obsessed with training and your whole world isn't training. You have this other life where you can
You're obsessed
help
with
create
your
a bit of a balance.
Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. And then Brent looked really sharp this weekend. I was happy to see that because he changed coaches. He's getting coached by a friend of ours now. And best I've seen him look in years. He just looked like, because previous, 2019, he looked a little tired, like haggard. And that's like Brute is super high volume and heavy, and just, I don't think that was working well. And he looked great. He did really, really well.
What I loved about Brent was in one of the post-event interviews, he had tape all over his like knee or hamstring.
Yeah.
And the interviewer said, look, what's going on with your leg? Or the girl, I don't know who was interviewing him. And he was like, oh, doesn't it look good? He's like, I'm fine. But like, to me, that's important. Like, he's not self-handicapping. He's not like making excuses. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's fine. Like, there's no excuse for him not doing well in a running event. Like, he just does his best and moves on and focuses on what he's doing. There's none of this like on Instagram, like, oh, like I'm really pushing through this pain. Like, what? What I went through was really difficult. Like, even, Sam Cornier, who, like, I don't know him at all, but I follow him on Instagram, and it's like, he had a rough night. He had food poisoning or whatever it was. And it's like, I don't know. It's just in the event, like, why are you posting that stuff? Like, just focus on doing better the next day for yourself, and maybe after the fact, do it. Like, what's the point?
I've always had opinions about that. I think,
it's self handicapping.
Yeah. Like and obviously Brent didn't want to talk about it, probably because he doesn't want to like give into it power or give it any mental space. And like, clearly whatever was going on impacted his ability to do that running toes to bar workout to the like, to his potential. But he's like,
if we had to guess, we don't know. We don't have any inside information on this.
No. But yeah, what's the point in talking about it? Like, it is what it is. Like, you can assume that almost everyone at the games has a little something going on.
Everybody is a little bit injured.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not worth talking about. And I've always had an issue with people who really like, who get, they feel like they have to put it out there. Because number one, it's an ego thing. It's just in case you don't perform the way that you want to, or you don't perform to the expectations that you think people have that they don't. Mm-hmm. It's so you can say, well, this. And then it also mentally gives you something. It makes it easier if you can't go to 100% effort on any one event. It gives you something, which is, again, it's an ego-driven move.
Yeah.
But it's, at any rate, it really allows you, and I've definitely done it. But when you're in those moments and it really hurts, because it often really hurts, you can say, it's okay, Meredith. Like, you weren't feeling well yesterday. If you can't give this a great effort, you have a good reason. So you can back off now. And that's what giving that kind of thing mental space does, instead of doing what Brent does or did in that moment, which is like, no, it's good. I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. I don't know. I appreciated that from him.
I did too.
It's
kind of rare.
Yeah. It's rare to just be like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, it's CrossFit. I think it's because it exists so much on social media, and it is about like ego and appearance. It's just that all you hear about is like, oh, I had this injury, or I went through this last night, and I'm, but I still managed to prevail. And it's like, just do your job. Like, just be in the, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I really like that from Brent.
Yeah.
I think that was that was an athlete. That was like somebody who's just out there to just do it, and he did it.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree.
Even at like semifinals, there was no like excuses from him.
Yeah, it was just like, all right, so apparently I have to win the final workout to make
but
this happen.
But he didn't even talk about it. He just did it.
Nope. Yeah.
At least from what I saw. I may have missed something, but
no, there was never anything put out about like, oh, well, this is why this happened and this is why this happened. Like, Brent knows he doesn't crush online competitions. He's not trying to pretend that he is someone who does. And so, like, I don't think it's any surprise when you don't see Brent winning an online competition.
But he's not saying, oh, I have this elbow thing, or, I have to do this in my garage. Like,
yeah, it's like, well, this is the hand that I've been dealt. These are the events I have to do.
And that's probably why he gets it done.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. But I thought that was, I enjoyed seeing that. I wish Chandler had done a bit better. That was a bummer. He almost squeaked into the top 20, but didn't. Yeah. That was kind of it for standouts, I think. Anything else?
Nope.
Yeah. So we'll get on to what everyone's here for, I think, and what we're most excited to talk about, which are things that annoyed us. Drum roll, please. We're going to keep this as civilized as possible.
But still sassy.
Because that's why we're here. And this podcast is not brought to you by anyone who is going to be offended by this. So hang on to your butts. Okay, so I'm just going to say it. And this is probably, again, in part due to the fact that we are watching the CrossFit Games alongside the Olympic Games. Who has and I am not going to compare the CrossFit Games broadcasting team to NBC Sports broadcasting team because the budget is on another planet. But I think that There are some good things about the broadcasting team at the CrossFit Games, and there are some bad things about it. The good thing about it is, like
They
many
have
things, it's back.
And then moving on.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Was there more?
There's more.
Okay, sorry.
I will say it was nice to have one streamlined broadcast instead of like in 2019. In 2020, there was like the Rogue broadcast and like the Morning Chalk Up. Like you remember how that was?
No.
Because CrossFit Media had cut their broadcasting team. So,
that was 2019.
Yeah, but I mean,
I watched it.
We
online.
were there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't watch it. But that's how it happened. And so it's kind of distracting. So it's nice that it's centralized again. It's nice that, like many things in CrossFit, the broadcasting team and the people who are involved in commentating the sport have come from the community for the most part. So you do get a bit of a grassroots feel with it, but I think that's also the downside. It's also the downfall of the commentary. I thought, again, and I said this for some of the semifinals, like you can tell that we're kind of, brushing the cobwebs off. I think on the whole, it was good. I really like Sean Woodland. I like Tommy. Sometimes he gets a little tangled up with his words. I missed, it was noticeable that there were no female commentators. Usually you have Annie, Sakamoto or someone else on the broadcast. And, it was noticeable for me anyways. It kind of felt like bros just like talking the whole time. Where I think Annie, or a female commentator tends to kind of cut that a little bit. And it's like, we're inclusive. There are plenty of female experts who you can bring on to help broadcast.
But like, these guys aren't experts.
Okay. I mean, let me experts with finger quotes.
Like, I'm thinking of two right now that they easily could have asked. Number one was, Margot Alvarez, who's done it before, who is just she knows what's going on. She's extremely well spoken and has done it before.
Yeah, she brings in the vantage point of a very recent CrossFit Games
but
athlete.
She's done broadcasting before for like regionals and stuff.
Yeah,
so she's familiar been on with the way things work.
Well, she was a part of the Rogue, like the Iron Game or whatever the Rogue broadcast was. She was a part of that team. Like,
but she's also recently been she's competed at the games many times, but also has done it very recently.
Yes.
The other person, who is Jamie Hygia, who apparently has an education in communications and is trying to get on the media team, and instead of putting her like commenting on the workouts, she's out on the grounds doing, I don't even know what she did. I didn't see her at all. Yeah, she wasn't a part of the broadcast. She wasn't on social media.
Yes.
Okay, so what did you do? Like, why aren't you using her? Like, she at least has an education in this. Again, is familiar with what's going on the play, like as a competitor.
Yeah.
And has done the sport at a high level.
I agree. Yeah. So that was noticeable for sure. Yeah, and you do have Jamie who's on the floor, and like, why she wasn't on the broadcast more, not really sure, because they have Mike Arsenault who's on the floor and doing, on like interviews with coaches and with athletes as they're coming off. So like, where's Jamie? Why isn't Jamie doing that?
She was on the grounds.
Okay.
She was in the Ram truck.
Okay.
At one point. I did see her at one point.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would like to see Jamie more.
Yeah.
Next time.
Not commenting on the Ram trucks.
Yeah.
More on the athletes.
Are not even good trucks. Ask me for how I feel about Dodge.
Yeah, we have a whole.
I thought that, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on production. There could be more done probably from a production team standpoint. There were a few instances early in the weekend where, the camera, and they have to broadcast on what they see, right? So they don't get to dictate what the camera's on and who the camera's on. Whatever is on camera is what they're commenting. They're commenting on. There, I think, can be a little more planning behind that. But there were moments where there were athletes on camera for an awkward amount of time that they clearly did not know very much about. you know, the best they could come up with. You know, I think one of the guys was from like Latvia or something. Like the only thing they knew was that he competed in 2019. I'm like, this guy's a whole story, a whole life that is.
He's on Instagram, isn't he?
He's on Instagram.
How have you not looked this guy up? There's only 40 people competing.
Yeah, it's not
40
like
men competing. Like, you should know a little bit about every person.
Yeah, it's not 2019. You're not dealing with all these like random national champions. Like these are people who qualified a long time ago. You have plenty of time to do research, or the production team does. And at a minimum, you should be able to pronounce their names, which didn't always happen. But yeah, like, you know, where are they from? Who do they train with? Do they have a job? What do they do for work? Do they have family? What does their family do? Like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like there's tons to talk about. And you see this in Olympics all the time.
But what is so unfortunate is because this sport is a popularity contest, you have everybody knows everything about Jessica Griffith and nothing against her, or like Brooke Wells. Mm-hmm. They're very popular in social media. They've been in the sport for a long time, and they've got a lot of personality. But that doesn't mean that and they can talk about everything about them. Like, oh, you know, that this is who their coach is. This is, you know, Jess Griffith does mayhem, so she's doing a lot of this in her programming. Like, they know a lot about Haley's programming, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, but what's unfortunate is, like, you're going to get heats that are, it's heat 1 of 4 or heat 1 of 2, where you're getting these athletes who are in the back who might start winning a workout, and they're going to be on the screen. Like, how do you not have anything to say? Not even one thing.
Yeah.
You took no time. And you only have 40 names to learn. You shouldn't be on a broadcast saying, like, I'm not even going to try to say her name because I'll mess it up.
Yeah.
Really? Really?
Yeah, I agree. But I think that's an opportunity to, like, if you're going to hold yourself out as a professional broadcaster and commentator, that's an opportunity. Like, okay, that's a good challenge. Like, I want to make some of these earlier heats more entertaining for spectators by knowing some of this stuff about people, by doing the research, by like, you know, having, if any of these people gets put on camera for 30 to 60 seconds, can I fill that time with interesting information? And that's the challenge, I think. And it's a couple of times that didn't happen. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate, especially for the, you know, that athlete who has an opportunity to capitalize on some of the exposure that they're getting. And they don't get that, you know, because no one cares unless you're, you know, have 200,000 to 300,000 Instagram followers. Probably the biggest, and I'm going to do this as tactfully as I can. The biggest beef that I have with the commentating this weekend, was specifically with Chase Ingram, who I think is a nice person. I have had a few interactions with him on, Instagram maybe. And there were a couple of sort of, I'm not even going to say nitpicky, because it was becoming a pattern by the end of the weekend. And that's just this need to correct.
I think you like the term mansplain.
Yeah, I was going to try to not use that word.
I know, but I
sure
wanted you to use it.
Females are capable of doing this as well. But to watch an athlete, you know, do a particular movement in a particular way, and instead of just observing and commenting, there's this need to, you know, correct or say this is bad or she shouldn't do this. And you kind of saw that happen sort of periodically through the weekend. It was it occurred on the snatch quite a bit. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't just make this up in my head, because I understand that I can be subject to my own bias, especially when it's men commenting on women's sports.
But on top of that, I'll add that and then I'll let you continue.
Okay.
When was the last time Chase Ingram competed as an individual?
I don't know. It's been a long time. I don't actually know. Wait, like 2011? I don't know. I don't know when he competed. I do know he competed.
But these athletes, he has no right to tell these athletes how to do something.
It would be like no offense to Mike Fitzgerald, who's our coach. It would be like Mike commenting on the way that Justin is doing anything. And it's like, and then saying, well, I competed as an individual in 2009. I know what I'm talking about. And it's like,
there's absolutely no need to do that.
Yeah,
period. It doesn't matter how good you are. Like, even Matt Fraser, he shouldn't get up there and be like, oh, they're doing this in a really bad way. It's like, just that's not what the commentary is there for.
Yeah.
It's like you can make observations, but like to be so judgmental of the way that athletes are performing it was so negative. But I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Yeah. Like there's some validity in that. If you've seen the movie Dodgeball, and like that's a parody sports movie, but the commentator in that movie, they're doing something ridiculous, and he says like, bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if this plays out for him. Do that.
Yeah.
When you see someone doing something weird, like you can observe it, you can comment on it, but there's no need to correct it because you're not in that athlete's body experiencing what they are experiencing. You don't know what they've talked about with their coach. You don't know what their strategy is. So to sit back and have any opinion at all on what their strategy should be is, I think, very inappropriate. And it's even more inappropriate to put it out there.
Not to mention the fact that all of these workouts that these athletes are doing, they've never been seen before.
Right.
So you don't know what the best strategy is. Nobody knows what the best strategy is.
Yeah. You'll know when the event is over.
Exactly.
Because the best strategy will win.
And all the athletes are different. So one strategy might be better for another athlete.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Anyway.
So understanding my own bias
I'm not a biased person.
Okay.
It's all based on fact.
Yeah. Well, I want this to be based on fact.
Yep.
So I needed to kind of like back up and objectively look at what I know I felt this. I know there was a reason, but I also know that I'm a biased person, or that I can be quite biased when it comes to men talking about women. And so I went back and rewatched the final heat of individual event 4, which, if you don't remember, was the wall walk thruster event. It went 10, 9, all the way to 1 on wall walks, and then heavy thrusters, 185, 135. And I watched the final heat for men, and I watched the final heat for women. Exact same broadcasting team. They happened basically one right after the other. It's Chase and Sean. And then I made note of the number of comments made specifically on technique of the movements being performed. So we have wall walks and thrusters. And when I talk about technique, I'm not talking about, what are they doing? I'm talking about comments made specifically on how they are doing it. So for example, Brent has a very unique and a very efficient wall walking strategy, the way that he does that movement. So that was brought up a few times. Number of comments on the technique. And then of those comments, how many of them were corrective? How many of them were saying, okay, they're doing this movement this way, they should be doing it that way, or they should not be doing this, or this is bad, or this is going to catch up. Anything that indicates what they're doing is wrong. Okay. So in the final heat of the men for that event, there were 6 comments made on technique. 5 of those 6 were distinctly positive and like complimentary in nature. And then 1 was just an observation. Of the 6, 0 of those comments were corrective in nature. So 6 comments made on technique, none were corrective. Women's final heat, individual event 4. And if you watch this, you remember Mal won this event. She went unbroken on the thrusters, which was kind of the notable thing about it. There were 3 total comments made on technique. None of those comments were distinctly positive. And of those comments, the 3 comments that were made on technique, 3 of them were corrective in nature. So there weren't any observations made. There weren't any positive compliments given. There was, you need to take a break, referring to Mal doing the thrusters. This is going to add up. She needs to stop doing that. Those were kind of the 3 comments that were made that just felt, sort of off. And it's like, why are you correcting this CrossFit Games athlete on air? Like, yes, she's young. Yes, she's 17. Yes, she's pausing with the bar over her head. Maybe that's not what you would do, but she's a smaller athlete. She's very strong, but she's small. Like, I'm small. I also pause with the bar overhead. Why? Because when your shoulders are fatigued and your legs are fatigued, sometimes it's better and easier to stand there in a totally locked out and supported position before going into the next rep. And that
it
takes
allows
less time than dropping the bar on the ground and then having to squat clean it and then having to correct the to correct the position in the squat clean in order to go into the thruster.
It allows you to take a breath in the middle of each rep,
Yeah.
between each reps, and it slows down the rate of the movement.
Yeah.
Which, if anybody has done a wall walk, you're holding your breath almost the entire rep.
Yeah.
So going back to the thrusters and pumping out 10, 9, 8, 7 thrusters like Tia does, where you're basically holding your breath the entire time, is going to jack up your heart rate and jack up your breathing. And then you go back to the wall walk and you all have to hold your breath again. So maybe Mal's approach was the best one. Why, of all those 3 comments, to me, it was constant doubt.
Yeah. And it's like, you can, like, she's ahead. She's been ahead since the beginning. She's staying ahead. And then like going back to a comment made by, on Brent on the wall walks, they're talking about, he talks about stacking the skeletal structures to help with stability and make the movement easier. Well, that's exactly what she's doing with the barbell. It's the same thing. She's just standing up with it. So it seemed off to me that there was so much praise given to the boys and to Brent. And then literally the only comments made on the girls were negative, and it was doubtful. And then even at the end, even when it's very clear that Mal is going to win this competition, it's like, she's got to do this. She's got to do this. She's got to pick up the bar. Like it's like, you don't have to explain what she needs. She's doing it. She's doing exactly what she needs to do to win the event. And then she ends up beating Tia by like a minute.
My favorite is, they use he's gotta for the men too, when it's the second heat of 2 and they always say, that they got to be aware of the previous heat times. Like,
you know how hard that is?
He's going as fast as he can.
That's the whole sport.
He knows that there's a previous heat. Everybody knows that when you're competing at that level.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you're trying to remind the spectators or the people watching on the live stream, like, hey guys, like, you have to remember that, like, even though Brent's winning this event, there might still be other people in the previous heat who's posted some pretty good times. This is the time that Brent needs to beat to win the event.
It's
like Brent's got to be aware that, like, he doesn't only have to win this heat. Brent doesn't need to be aware of that. The people watching can be aware of that.
Or it's even, again, Olympics, commenting on runners. Like, they don't at any point say like, oh, well, this 200-meter sprinter needs to be aware that if he doesn't come in the top 2, he's going to have to qualify on time.
Yeah.
And he has to be aware that other heats are going to come into play. Oh, he better be aware of that in the closing. No. He's running as fast as he can. Like, if you're not winning a qualifying event, you're running as fast as you can. It's the same thing as the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing the event to the best of your ability in that moment and as quickly as you can get it done with minimal errors made. Like,
I personally struggled to watch the last few events of the CrossFit Games because I was so annoyed with Chase Ingram.
Yeah. I mean,
that's my personal and just uncensored comment.
Yeah.
It was painful. It was really painful. And like, he was just making stuff up. For example, Tia wouldn't even be winning an event. And he's talking about how, what Tia's doing here, she's making up her own challenges because nobody is competing against her because she's so dominating. Well, she's getting beat right here in this event that you're talking about. She's not winning every event. She's not that dominating. Like, the reason why she went and broke it on the muscle ups isn't because like she's trying to make a new competition for herself, a new challenge.
I wonder if
it's because she just can, and she's trying to finish the event as fast as possible. Like,
because that's the test. Yeah, exactly. I completely agree.
Like, people were challenging her in many of the different events.
Yes.
It's just like, but why are you making stuff up? Just there's enough other things to talk about.
Or you can you can not talk on a broadcast. You don't have to fill every second with words. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's so challenging because like, I don't discount the fact that like, he probably knows a lot and he probably cares a lot and he's been involved with the sport for a long time. but was it the best broadcast? No. And it was actually, it was getting to the point where I was like skipping through or I was muting because I'm like, I can't with that guy right now. Like,
Yeah.
It was like Sean would say something and it would be great. And then it's like, yeah, I got to mute that. I don't know. It was getting to be a lot, especially like when I started noticing the pattern of correcting, especially overcorrecting the girls. I was like, okay.
I'm not sitting here and trying to say I could do a better job because I certainly could not. But having seen and watched the Olympics before and after events, the CrossFit Games, and again, like it's hard to compare, but there are better people out there for commentary. Why aren't they seeking this out?
Yeah, and maybe that will be like now that the broadcasting team is back, and like again, they kind of just had to get the gang back together this season because it needed to happen quickly. But maybe as the sport grows, we can look to like professionalize the whole production team a little bit more and like, get some different voices and try some things out and see who's the best fit for commentating the sport. So we'll see. There were like only a few comments made about lactic acid, but they were, I think, again, Chase said this is a quote, he's experiencing a lactic acid dump. And I would be so curious to know what exactly is a lactic acid dump. How does that occur in the body? What does it feel like? Yeah. Stu, if anyone knows the answer to that, just shoot me a message. Very curious about that.
I think the only person you need to ask about that is Chase.
Is a lactic acid dump what you take the day after you put too much hot sauce on your burrito? Yeah, that's probably a little more accurate. Certainly just as close to the truth as a physiological lactic acid dump. What do you think about Spirit of the Games? We're going to get off the broadcasting for a bit. Spirit of the Games award is given out every year. It was given to Scott Panchik this year. You don't agree with that.
Okay, I like Scott Panchik. I think he's a great person and like he's been in the sport for a while but I think, and he's retiring, which is something that they consider, I'm sure. But I think Annie should have won Spirit of the Games.
I agree. I thought it was Annie. I thought it should have been Annie all along.
Like she just lit everyone's fires up. Like
yeah.
I don't know. That wasn't a great like way of saying it. It was just, there was just this like, she gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
It like more than in one event. Like
yeah.
She just, and we've talked about her, but she was just this like, this super bright light at the CrossFit Games this year. And it was just impossible to not notice her and feel that positivity and that excitement and the love for the sport at a high level. And
yeah, I think Annie was the better
and
fit.
She's been around, like, I think they said 12 years.
Yeah.
She's competed in 3 different decades.
Yeah.
I can't even comprehend that. That is amazing.
Yeah.
And I know she's not retiring and Scott is, and that, they want to recognize somebody who's been in the sport for a while. And like Scott Panchik has an amazing reputation in the sport. But like, if you're looking at just that individual games, I mean, Annie was the star.
Agree. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Not to take anything away from Scott and his career, but
yeah,
Annie's the GOAT. All right, let's wrap. You ready to wrap this up?
Yeah.
Tia's coming back next year. Can anyone beat her? Yes or no?
No.
I don't think so either. No.
People will start closing in on her in certain events, but she's too dominating all around.
Yeah.
To beat.
She's too well-rounded.
And almost every single person has, even if the hole is shallow, they still have holes.
Yes.
Like Laura Horvath has holes. And with the programming changing so much year to year, you don't know what you're going to get in one amount. And it seems as though each year, Tia just nothing is, she's never exposed.
No.
And all of the people behind her have been exposed. So
yeah,
like they're closing the gap, I think. And that's going to continue to happen just with, these new younger athletes coming up.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's going to happen in time.
No, I don't think so either. I was just thinking about something that's kind of funny. You know that picture of her flexing when she got out of the water, which was that's a great picture. Also a little bit weird. It's kind of funny when you consider she had just gotten out of a kayak, like an open water kayak. And then anyways, I thought that was funny. Yeah, I don't think that will happen. She'll retire before she's actually beaten. Anything you'd like to see next year or change?
More colorful uniforms and also better commentators and just better broadcasting. Like one thing we missed is that this has been a problem for so many years at every single level, show some of the other competitors on the floor.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Pan out every once in a while.
Pan out, like show, even just for a second, show who's in third or fourth.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, and then Brooke Wells is third and Kristen Holte's fourth. And it's like, okay, well, we didn't see them at all.
You know who you didn't see basically like at all this weekend was Noah. Like, have you thought about that?
I have, because I remember you said, hey, where's Noah?
Like, he didn't drop out, did he? But yeah, it's like,
you didn't really see BKG, and he was like top 5. It's like only on the paddle, and then it was like, okay,
yeah.
So now we're just gonna watch like Justin
Yeah.
and Vellner and
Brent.
and,
yeah,
and the guy from, is it Brazil? Guilherme?
Yeah.
He was impressive in some of those events.
Yeah,
he was fun to watch.
He was a standout for
Yeah.
sure. I agree with all of that, and I would say I would love to see a legit straight up running event, just something that just make them run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's it. I thought the programming this year was great. I thought it, from a fitness standpoint, was very, very well balanced, and even with kind of the weirdness that was the freestanding handstand push-ups, I thought, good for everyone out there for figuring those out. Didn't think they'd ever be a thing, but
I was actually super impressed with people doing those. I was like, okay, these are the kinds of things that make the sport look stupid. And then I turned on the TV and I was like, okay, never mind.
yeah. I agree.
Everyone's actually doing a pretty dang good job with these.
Yeah. Justin's last rep shouldn't have counted, so he should feel lucky for that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all we have. Do you have anything else? Do you have anything on your mind?
I wish I had been there.
You do?
I feel a little bit, I had FOMO.
But like, would spectating have been?
No, I wish I was on the demo team.
Yeah.
Or on the field. It's such a fun, even when I used to just go to spectate before I got on the demo team or before I competed, it was so fun to be there. And I felt like I missed out this year not being there. But
yeah,
I had other things to do and I wasn't really invited in any capacity. And
I've only spectated 1 year.
Oh, really?
I was a coach in 2015. I spectated 2016. That's when I met you.
Mm-hmm.
Coach 2017, athlete 2018, demo 2019, locked in my house 2020, then this year. So
I don't know. I missed out. I just, the games has always just been so fun.
Yeah.
And I've made this point before, but what's so exciting about being at the CrossFit Games and being a part of it, and what's different with the CrossFit Games than other live sporting events, is everybody watching CrossFit does it.
Yeah.
And so it's not like baseball where, you've got these like guys with beer guts eating hot dogs and drinking beer in the stands. You have like people who do CrossFit.
They can conceptualize how difficult it
exactly. It's like, wow, I can't thruster 135 and look at these girls doing, and that's guys.
Yeah.
I know. I think that's what makes the CrossFit Games so cool. It's the community again.
Yeah.
So, but I enjoyed watching it for sure.
Yeah.
It was a fun weekend.
Yep. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. It was a long one. Would love to hear your feedback. If you have any, you know where to find us. If you like this, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.